everybody. Just wanted to say thank you so much for signing on with us this morning. We're very excited to get started, and so I'm just going to take just a moment to talk through a few of our housekeeping details. So if you are on the line and you experience any volume issues or speed quality issues, the first thing I would say is to make sure that you are that your volume is turned up to the appropriate level and that you close all other programs and windows. And that for any severe issues, you'll want to try logging off and logging back in. And just so everybody knows, the webinar is being recorded and will be sent out. So it takes about 24 to 48 hours for it to fully process, but we will be sending that out right afterwards. So this is me, Jones, Community Outreach Manager. I facilitate and moderate these webinars. We also have seminars that we do, and we also do mixers every single month. So there's lots of opportunities for local businesses to get together and find out how to succeed. And we have our lovely presenter today, Quinn Tempest. She's a digital marketing strategist. And a little about Quinn. She is an independent digital strategist and designer based in downtown Phoenix, Arizona. She has directed digital marketing strategies for enterprise-level clients and designed brand and websites for small businesses and entrepreneurs. Quinn is a frequent and highly rated speaker, speaking on a range of digital marketing topics at conferences and organizations around the country. And so with that, I am going to turn it over to you, Quinn, if you would like to take that over, and here we go.
Yes, hello everyone. I'm just going to get my screen up here really quickly. I hope you're all doing well. I actually saw a few names of people I recognize here, so I'm excited and wanted to thank you all for coming. So Kendall, let me know if my slides are showing and if we're good to go. Hopefully they are. Okay. Well, perfect. Thank you so much for coming again. Today we're going to be talking about one of my, which is Instagram, specifically about the art and strategy behind an effective Instagram account. So a little bit about me before we, as Kendall mentioned, is Quinn Tempest. That is my real name as well. I'm hoping to become Marvel's next superhero for controlling the weather. But for now, I am just a digital marketing strategist, as a graphic and web designer. Like Kendall mentioned, I do country speaking on a range of topics, mainly within the content marketing realm. And as you can see in my photo, I am an urbanista based in downtown Phoenix. So I actually haven't owned a car in probably over 4 years. So you'll usually see me zipping around town like. So if you'd like to follow along, or as well as the art behind it. Because as I found, you really truly have to have a balance between both. You can't just without some type of strategic principle motivating what you're choosing to present on your grid. And you can't just, before we do that, before we jump into the nitty gritty, because that's going to get into kind of tactics that you can use on Instagram, I want to first take a step back and talk about what is Instagram. To sum it up, then I would say where you can share what you ate for lunch today, And hopefully, if you were in real life with me, I would hope to hear some chuckles here. But since I can't hear anyone, I'm going to assume that you might have saw some truth in this. We've all done it. We've all posted what we've eaten for lunch, right? And of course, up to Photoshop, and then by the time they were actually ready to eat the food, it was either soggy or. But in all seriousness, this is the wild and wacky world of Instagram. It has really changed the game for businesses. So in all seriousness, though, Instagram is a visual medium. It is where you post beautiful, attractive photos, kind of like this one, very stylish, evocative. But it's also a place to realize that every single other person had the same idea. And, this is just a joke here to kind of lighten things up. But in all true seriousness time, Instagram is a platform that has experienced exponential growth in probably the past year, maybe a little bit more, a year and a half. It's really changed how brands interact with their consumers or prospective customers. It's created these people called influencers, which we won't get too much into today, but that has really become the platform for influencer marketing. And it is the best platform to create authentic, real relationships with your customers or prospective clients. Also, it is the perfect extension for any content marketing efforts that you're already doing on other platforms. So we're going to talk today about how Instagram can be the extension of your content marketing and how to do it properly. And so why have we seen this exponential growth on Instagram? It's something I've thought a lot about lately as Instagram's come into normal conversation across all different mediums and all different types of people. And I think it really comes down to a simple fact, is that people like Instagram. If I were to be in the room with you, I would ask you all, do you personally like to be on Instagram? And feel free to put that in the chat telling me, do you personally just enjoy your time on Instagram? The world tends to agree that they like it as well. Some stats that are pretty staggering is that there are 4.2 billion likes per day. And on average, people spend at least half an hour every day on Instagram. For me, it's more about like 8.25 hours, but that's besides the point. And it's really interesting that Instagram has become so popular because, to be honest, it really has bucked the mold of what we expect a social media platform to be because it is so dang simple. Think about it. How do you interact with Instagram? All you really do is you swipe, you look at photos, you double tap it to like it, and maybe if you really like it, you leave a comment. There's really limited opportunity for brands to push people off the platform by using links like on Twitter and Facebook or other calls to action that most other platforms do. And I love this quote I found from an article on The Atlantic because it kind of sums up everything about why people like Instagram so much and why they love that simplicity. Robinson Meyer wrote, "It is so simple as to be almost serene." And I think people are attracted to this, and that is why we've seen such exponential growth over the past year, year and a half, especially where Instagram's parent company has come along, Facebook. We've seen a lot of drama on Facebook. It's even kind of embroiled in some global political drama, and there's increasing polarization of opinions on Facebook. So no wonder that people have started moving over to Instagram for a more simple, a more serene experience. So let's look at how some statistics back this up. First and foremost, let's look at usage. There are now 800 million users on Instagram. That's amazing. And in terms of daily users, 500 of those 800 are daily on the platform interacting with their friends, interacting with brands. And also just to put this in perspective, in 2017 specifically, every 4 months, Instagram added 100 million users. That's staggering. And if I were to make a prediction for you, because these numbers are from the end of November of last year, I would say we're going to pretty soon hear an announcement from Instagram saying that they've hit 1 billion users. So you can quote me on that. I would say within the next month, we'll probably hear that from Instagram. Also, stories are extremely powerful. There are now 300 million daily story users. Also, to put that in perspective for you, Snapchat used to be really the place where people went for this type of daily visual content. But after only 9 months of its creation, Instagram stories took over Snapchat's amount of users. And at this point, it is nearly double the amount of daily users that Snapchat has. So there is a lot of power in having people on this platform, and it's going to just keep getting exponentially bigger over the next 2018 as well as into 2019. So let's look at some numbers in terms of businesses on Instagram, since we're all businesses here. And Kendall did show me a list of kind of what industries you're all in. And I know we're all kind of over the map of where we are, but it doesn't matter because everyone's moving towards Instagram because they know this is a place where their audience is hanging out online. So we now see that 25 million businesses are on Instagram. And this is a number, again, from the end of November. But what's staggering is that this number is up from 15 million at the end of July. So only a few months after they added 10 million business users. And now one of the questions you might be asking is, well, aren't people just posting photos of their food and what they did today and engaging with their friends? Well, the answer is no. 80% of users are actually following a business account. That's 8 out of 10 people are interacting with brands just like yours every day. And this number is the best one. 200 million users are actively visiting a brand's profile daily. So that doesn't mean they're just following you. They're actually going to your profile, assessing what you got there, and engaging with you directly on your brand's account. So these all account up to giving us a clear picture that not only are the users on Instagram, but this is the perfect platform to start engaging with them from a brand perspective. I added 2 more stats in here for you all specifically at Local First, because I know a lot of us are small business owners or entrepreneurs. And I wanted to bring this in, is that 30% of users have bought a product first discovered on Instagram. This is an amazing number because more and more, Instagram has become a discovery tool and a research tool. It's not only where they're engaging with you, although that's very important, they're also doing their research to help them along their purchasing process while they're looking for a solution or a product that they need. The second aspect of this is that 1 out of 3 small business owners in a survey, by the way, this was from Instagram itself, built their business entirely on Instagram, which we're going to talk about today, how this is very powerful, the stat itself, but also it can be slightly misleading. So we're going to be talking about how we can build our business through Instagram, but also how we need to connect not only our Instagram platform, but everything we do within our digital marketing plans off the platform to make sure we're really taking ownership over the audience and the relationships we build there. So now we're going to get back into the art and the strategy of Instagram. And what I will say is my background is in content marketing. So I was a director of marketing at a local agency here in Phoenix for the past 5 years. I'm now back on my own, and mostly I'm working on branding, web design, content strategy for my clients, but it's always rooted in a understanding of content marketing strategy. And Instagram is the perfect vehicle for that. So what I want to do before we get into the nitty-gritty tactics is to look at what are the motivations behind content marketing and how does Instagram fit into that picture. So I've tried, for the most part, to distill many, many years of experience into 4 simple statements for us all so that we can connect the dots to see how Instagram is a perfect extension of your other content efforts. So the first statement, and many of you probably have heard this before, number 1, people buy from businesses they like. Think about it. When was the last time you bought something or you hired someone? You had to like them first, right? Especially nowadays in the digital age, we want to make sure that our values are aligned with the businesses we give our money to. We want to make sure we're voting with our dollars. So how do we create likability online and through channels like Instagram? Well, it comes down to trust. People like businesses they feel they can trust. They want to make sure, again, that their values are aligned, that they can trust that you're going to get a great experience, a great quality product, or a great quality service. So trust is the key to likability in the digital age. Now we got to go further, right? How do we build trust? Well, think about relationships. At a very human level, the only way we can build trust is through relationships. And in the digital world, in this information age, relationships are created through content. Every single piece of content you create, you put out online, can be the start of a relationship with a prospective client or a potential customer. So if we were to build this backwards, it's that content builds relationships, relationships build trust, trust builds likability, and likability ends up with loyal customers, hopefully for a very long time. So these are the major statements that back up content marketing. So now you may want to take your phone out or screenshot the next slide, but don't worry, Kendall's going to send this out and I'll also give you a link to this. How does Instagram fit into this content marketing dynamic? This is the statement I've come up with, is that Instagram is a curated visual experience of your brand that is creatively presented and strategically planned in order to build a relationship with your audience. So what I want to first start off with today is talking about strategy. This is the aspect of Instagram that I think a lot of brands are struggling with. There are a lot of creative people out there figuring out how to create content, how to take beautiful photos, but when it comes to Instagram strategy, there's not necessarily a clear understanding of how it all works. So what I want to go into in the next section is how these pretty pictures you're posting can actually help you achieve your marketing goals and your overall business goals, what the strategic principles of Instagram are, and how understanding that you can reverse engineer that knowledge for success. And just a quick caveat too, I'm not going to be talking about high level kind of content marketing strategy stuff because that really should be in a different webinar. So really this gram strategy should be an extension of any existing content marketing strategy you have. So I'm not going to talk about audience personas, competitive analysis, anything like that. Instead, I want to really give you the tools to understand how Instagram specifically works so you can reverse engineer that understanding for the platform specifically. And where we have to start is the algorithm, which is a scary word for a lot of people. I totally understand. I actually spent the past 5 years teaching workshops mainly on the Google algorithm. So kind of how to understand how Google ranks content in order to create content to rank higher. And if there is any one word to describe the Instagram algorithm, my word would be fickle. And I know many of you who have probably spent a lot of time on Instagram, you have felt the same way, where every single day it's different. All the time, Instagram is tweaking it. And I'm guessing they're doing that at a faster pace right now because of how many users have been coming to the platform and how much they really need to refine their system for showing content. So let's talk about some of the major factors that go into the Instagram algorithm, which, as you know, is how it produces the photos we see, because it's not chronological anymore. It will never go back to being chronological. So we need to understand how it works in order to make sure our content gets seen. So here are the 3 factors we're going to talk about. The first one is engagement. Engagement is the currency of Instagram and is probably one of the most important factors to reverse engineering this algorithm. The second one is timeliness. Because the algorithm isn't chronological anymore, we have to make sure we're posting at the most effective time for our audience and our niche in order to reach the most percentage, the highest percentage of our audience. And we're going to talk about how to find that. The third aspect is relevancy. The more relevant your content is, the better timely it is in terms of posting, and the higher engagement you get adds up to being shown to more people through how this algorithm works. So we're going to go into each of these more specifically. But first, let's start with relevancy. And the key part of relevancy is hashtags. I love this GIF. I don't know if any of you have seen this. It's from the Jimmy Fallon skit with Justin Timberlake, where they basically have hashtag conversations by tapping their fingers. It's pretty hilarious if you haven't seen it. The hashtags are one of your biggest opportunities to be discovered and to be relevant on Instagram. But what you really need to focus on is researching hashtags thoroughly and using them strategically. Just a couple months ago, at the end of the last year, Instagram rolled out a new feature where people can start following hashtags, not just following people or brands. You can actually follow hashtags. So there's more opportunity to show up on people's feeds through relevant, researched, and strategic hashtags. So let's talk about how to actually research them and use them strategically. I'm going to give you an example from my own account, just because it's fresh on my mind and I can talk to it more personally versus my client. So this is a photo, a very simple photo of me that I took in my home office here in downtown Phoenix. And just to give you some background, my audience on Instagram is typically a woman entrepreneur who is interested in building their small business or solopreneurship. And so I took this picture knowing that it was going to resonate with this audience. And I'm sorry, I hope you all can hear me. There's some landscaping happening outside my office, which I didn't really expect. So hopefully you can hear me above the wind blower or the leaf blower. So here's the picture. And now I start to create a caption. Because I had this little boss sign, all I said was, this was the best $12.99 I ever spent. A marble boss sign that sits on my desk reminding me I have the power to make magic happen daily. And then I ask a question in order to create engagement. So let's talk about how I would look at the anatomy of this caption to create a hashtag strategy for relevancy and engagement. So I'm going to break this caption down into buckets, into categories of topics that this caption covers. So the first one is obviously entrepreneurship. That is what the post is about. That is my key audience. But it also touches on motivation, it touches on inspiration, creativity, and then I pulled in color because I'm wearing a very bright, colorful outfit. And if you've seen my Instagram or look at it later, my whole visual strategy is about color. So now I've looked at my caption in terms of the topic categories and the buckets that it falls into. So this will help inform my hashtag selection. Here is a great tool I highly recommend writing down and saving. It's called displaypurposes.com. As you can see up top, I typed in a hashtag, and then it gives me probably 20 different hashtags that are related to the hashtag I put in. It also tells me the relevancy as well as the popularity of that hashtag. So this is normally where I start, and I recommend my clients start if they're doing hashtag research and don't really know where to go and what to start with. Displaypurposes.com is a great tool to start figuring that out. And one of the tips that I will tell you about hashtag selection is to create a hashtag library. Most people who on Instagram and brands try to spend a lot of time on every post coming up with different hashtags when you don't need to do that. Have a hashtag library you can pull from, so every caption is written in just a couple minutes, and it maybe takes you 1 to 2 minutes to choose your hashtags because you've done all the research up front. So here's a look at the hashtags I chose for this post based on my research. I bucketed them into a couple categories. Women in business, So I've already done my research. These are the ones that I selected that matched my photo and my topics on my photo. I also did some community and branded hashtags. I can't remember the statistic, but I think it was maybe like 50% of hashtags on Instagram are branded. So that means a company or a brand first started that hashtag in order to create a community. These are great hashtags to tap into your target audience who's already following similar competition or similar media sources to your business. Motivation was another bucket for my caption, so I included some that were relevant to that. And of course, because this photo was taken in downtown, location hashtags are key, especially for a lot of the businesses on this webinar who are location-based. Location hashtags are going to be very important, just as the geotag location at the top of your post up there, you can see I put downtown Phoenix, is important as well. And then I did some photo attributes, and these aren't necessarily as strategic as the top, but these would get in followers or interest for people who are looking for colorful photos. So this should really all come from your direct strategy and what your target audience is following on Instagram. But you do want to find the hashtag sweet spot. A lot of beginning Instagram strategies make this mistake of using hashtags that are far too saturated for their account. So here's an example of a travel hashtag. This is called hashtag InstaPassport. It has 11.5 million posts. This hashtag is updated almost every 12 seconds, the last time I looked. So that means it's hugely saturated. If you only have a couple hundred followers or only a couple thousand even, it's going to be very difficult for you to ever show up in this hashtag or any part of the top posts of this hashtag. So instead, you want to look for more specific hashtags that aren't as saturated. For example, if I was working with a client in the travel space, I would move them towards a hashtag like this, Sidewalker Daily. It is very focused, especially towards women, especially towards really beautiful, evocative photos. And it's only updated maybe every 20 minutes or so. So it's a lot less saturated. It's much more strategically placed for a client within this niche. And they would have much more opportunity to show up in the top posts of this hashtag. So don't make this mistake of going towards the really normal, regular ones that everyone uses. You have to do some research to find out the less saturated, more niche hashtags in order to get more for your efforts. Now let's move on to timeliness. As I mentioned, the feed is not chronological anymore, and it will never be going back, much to the dismay of all the fashion bloggers out there. So you really need to know what is your best time to post in order to meet and see and engage with as many as your followers as possible. So there's a couple things that you should note about this, is that between all of the businesses on this webinar, all of your best posting times are going to be different because you have different time zones, you have different types of people. Some of your audiences may prefer to engage at night versus in the morning. So there are not necessarily general principles for this, although I will share just a couple very basic things that I found in working with my clients and on my own account. The main thing you want to focus on is that your time zones matter. Now, I know many of you are local businesses where your audiences are local, but some of you are going to have people in different time zones. So you do want to look, if you have an Instagram business account, which you really should, at what your time zones are. So you can see on this screenshot, I can see what cities most of these followers are in, so I can start to kind of tweak my scheduling based on where most of my audience lives. Now, this is a very, very general statement. Weekdays are generally better for engagement. That doesn't mean weekends are bad. In fact, I found Sunday nights to be super effective for my audience and a couple of my clients. But at the same time, I always get more comments and interactions on the weekdays. These are generally better since people are more active on social media in the week. But the biggest lesson you need to know in terms of time, the best time to post, is just to test. Test everything. Start to spread out your schedule. morning, evening, weekend, and just see what works best. I personally, on my own account, don't like to use the Instagram analytics on the app because it feels too limited to me. So I use a third-party tool, and there's a couple of them out there. The one I use is called Iconosquare, and I'll make sure to give you all that tool in the future so that I can really get granular on when my best time to post. And this is the tool I usually recommend to my clients as well. Now, engagement is our next factor of the algorithm. And engagement, like I mentioned before, is truly the currency of Instagram. Now, what most people get right and most brands get right is engagement on your own account. This means responding to comments, liking comments, responding to direct messages. To me, this is a standard best practice for businesses. This should just happen without any effort. This should just always be part of your strategy. But what most people and brands miss is that it's not just about engaging on your own account. It's about engaging on other people's accounts, especially your followers, especially direct influencers that might help with your business, and sometimes competitors too. You never know. And this is something that most brands are missing and is why they're not gaining traction as well as not gaining followers. So we'll get into this more specifically. But first, I've got Matt Damon here to help me out with this one. So I don't know if many of you have heard the song Whip It and Nay Nay. It's this like kind of crazy song that has dance moves that go with it. And so here you see Matt Damon whipping it. And my whole point here with this funny slide is that you need to whip up engagement on your account by engaging with other people's accounts, with targeted follower counts, with your influencers, and so on. So I'm going to walk you through how you do this. Mainly, you need to shift your mindset to think of every post as a mini campaign. So you want to whip up engagement right after you post by engaging with others. It depends on how many resources you have, how much time and budget you have to devote to your Instagram. But something simple to at least start with is to think about engaging for a half hour every time you publish a photo on your feed. Because, as I mentioned, how engagement is the currency of Instagram, reciprocity is also the currency of Instagram. As soon as you engage on other people's accounts, I can tell you from experience, you will probably get 50 to 60% engagement back to your account pretty quickly after you engage. So think of your posts as campaigns and go out, whip out up engagement, and promote the fact you posted. And I'm going to tell you how to do that because you don't want to just say, hey, I posted, come to my feed and comment on my picture. That's not how you do it. You have to be authentic and you have to be real, engaging on other people's content. Another way to think about your post as a mini campaign is to repurpose your content in stories. Stories reach people more directly, and in fact, most people are now checking that far before they check their feed. So this is a great example from FrameBridge, who's a frame company, and they have this great photo of this dog in a painting and then a real dog. And they also repurposed it within their stories right after they posted their feed. So you can see it here in their stories. They had the same photo and they had a call to action to actually swipe up to go to their blog on their own website and to learn more about this dog story. This is a great way to get people to either come to your feed or to engage on your own content on your other channels. So here is an example of a tool to help you whip up engagement. This is called PeopleMap. It's peoplemap.co. And what's so amazing about this tool is you can create lists. So as you can see here, I'm putting people into lists based on criteria I have found. The criteria in this case was I filtered by people who were the top engagers on a client's account. So that means they like a lot of photos on this account, they comment a lot. And I can start creating lists so that as soon as we post a photo on an account, we go into our list, we go to their account, and we comment and we like on their photos. And like I mentioned with reciprocity, if you do this, you're going to see maybe 50, 60% of people come back to your feed, comment, and like on your account. So this is a great thing to do right after you post something on your account, because the more engagement Instagram sees, the faster after you've posted, the better your post will do in the long run. So whip up engagement by using a tool like People Map to create engagement that is easy and to create a process that works every single time you post. So we talked about Instagram stories a little bit, but I want to show you some examples on how people are doing this, because Instagram stories is an amazing way to connect directly with your audience and to create that relationship, build that trust, and build that loyalty we talked about with the foundation of content marketing. So think about Instagram stories as bringing your business to life and providing a glimpse into the broader universe of your brand. So you want to think about, what stories do we have to tell? What people do we have we can talk about? How can we give people a glimpse into what's happening within our business that might not go into a perfectly curated feed? Here's an example from Matter Prints. It's a great company that creates clothing, and they're very, very focused on sustainability and ethical worker relationships. So what they did on their Instagram stories was to actually take a tour of their Indian factory. So what they did was they showed the tools, they showed the loom that they used, they actually interviewed some of their textile workers, they showed what they ate for lunch, which if you like Indian food, this looks really appealing, which it does for me, and on and on. So this just brought their whole mission, their vision to life, and it gave their audience a glimpse into the behind the scenes that goes into making their clothing. Of course, it's aligned with their values as well. So this was very, very effective for them. Community growth. Let's talk about this, because most of us like to talk about the strategy and the art, but really the biggest question I get is, how do I grow my followers? And I have spent the past year working with myself, working with my clients, just studying this whole phenomenon of community growth. And I'm going to give you my tip for how to do it. Is follow, like, comment to initiate a relationship. So basically, with my clients and with myself, I always recommend to put together a target list of people. For me, it's women entrepreneurs who like colorful, fun, vibrant photos. So I can go into hashtags, I can follow competitors and find their followers. And what we do every single day is to follow, like, and comment on however many we can during the day. Usually we'll get about a 30% return on the people that are following back. So you want to create a target list based on those things. Think about a competitor within your space. That's where you can go and look at their followers in order to find targeted followers that would probably be interested in your account too. Same thing goes with hashtags. Where does your audience hang out? What hashtags are they looking at? You can find potential followers there. And really what you have to do is super manual, it's super boring, but this is how you initiate relationships and grow your community. You can see this screenshot on the right is from an account I worked on in order to grow their following, and it was using this strategy. They were able to grow 350 followers in a week, and their engagement and their reach grew as well. So if you have questions on that, we can talk about that later, but that is just a brief overview of how to grow your followers and to grow your community. But of course, remember, please remember this, you don't own your followers. On any social media channel, you don't own them. So don't forget this, because this is extremely important. Instagram can change their algorithm at any point, and you could lose your reach. A lot of people saw this about a year and a half ago when they changed the algorithm from chronological to algorithmic, and it really affected people's businesses. So always look at opportunities to move people off the platform to your own channels. This guy here, Aaron, a lot of his posts are ways to push people off the platform to get valuable giveaways, to get valuable content that's gated behind a form. Any way to get people off the platform engaging with your content, and especially giving you their email is extremely important, because once you have their email, that is where you can start to nurture the relationship that turns into trust, that turns into loyalty, and turns into customers. So always be thinking about creating calls to action. It doesn't have to be salesy. It just needs to be providing useful value to your audience in order to bridge them over to your own channels. So now let's get into the art of Instagram. And I'm just checking my time here just to make sure we've got enough time. So I'm going to go quickly through this and then open it up to some questions. So the art of Instagram is extremely important because it is such a visual medium on this platform. So first and foremost, we have to have a visual strategy. So if in the chat you can mark it down, do you guys have a visual strategy? I'd love to know. Is it documented? Are you clear on it? Do you know exactly what type of photos would fit into your visual strategy? Please put that in the chat and we can talk about it a little bit later. But your visual strategy should really be an extension of your content marketing strategy, but with a visual voice. If you don't have a visual strategy, I want to give you 3 questions to think about in order to create a very basic one. The first one is, what does your brand stand for? What are your values? And what are your unique differentiators that make your brand what your brand is? Second, what does your audience care about? In the example of Matter Prints, that clothing company, their audience cares about transparency and ethical work situations. So that is what they share, and they make sure their visual strategy matches that. Lastly, what makes you unique compared to your competitors? You don't want to have the same visual strategy of your competitors, because all these answers to these questions will be different. And this is really where you can differentiate yourself within your niche. So here are quick examples of some people or some brands with great visual strategies. This is with Truvi. They have an essential oil company. I love their statement on their Instagram because it's so simple. They say, essential oils that elevate simple moments. And you can see that statement weaved throughout their photos. Some of their photos actually feature their oils. Some of them don't. We have a plant photo, we have a bath photo, but it creates a broader feeling of what their brand is all about, which is simplicity and health and wellness. Yes to Carrots is completely different in terms of a visual strategy. They actually mainly focus on brand photos, which I normally wouldn't say you should do, always focusing on branded photos, but they do it so well and so creatively that people follow them because it is so engaging. Shopify. Shopify is a B2B company. So if there are any B2Bs in here, please don't be scared of Instagram. It is actually a great channel for B2B platforms, although there were some challenges in figuring out the strategy. But Shopify does this well by creating text images with quotes. They give stats, and they also give motivating kind of statements in order to help their customers learn how to better use their Shopify platform. So it's better use of their program. So that's a really good example of B2B. So these are 3 very different visual strategies, but you can see just by looking at their grid what they stand for and how they're unique. So in terms of individual photos on your feed, you want to think in terms of how diverse you can create content for. So we've got product and brand photos like on Yes to Carrots, lifestyle shots for that essential oil company. So how does your product actually come into someone's life? Same for B2B. How does the service enhance someone's life? User-generated content is the easiest type of content to create as long as you have a way to gather it. Behind the scenes, people want to know not so much about your branded photos and your advertisements, but they want to know who are the people behind your company and what makes you tick, as well as text. So the example I have here is from a French company called Dear Muesli, and they have great content diversity, both in formats, videos, carousels, boomerangs, but also in terms of types. They have the product photos of their actual muesli, their granola. They have behind the scenes photos of their team making it. And overall, they have a great content diversity that is engaging, is interesting, and honestly, it's never boring either. So think about this in terms of diversity of types of content as well as format of content. And of course, you want to make sure you make an impression. So we've talked about the individual photos on your Instagram, but what is so key is that 67% of people visiting your profile for your business come from those who aren't yet following you. So that means you need to make a good impression, not just with the individual photos, but with the whole grid on your profile itself. So you want to be thinking in terms of how can we perfect our look so that it is cohesive and that it is attractive to someone visiting our profile. Here are a couple tools. These are just apps. So if you have a designer in-house or if you hire a designer, most of the time they can make your photos look very consistent. But if you are doing it yourself or just want to learn about these tools, here are a couple that I really like. So in terms of perfecting your look, you want to think about having a consistent color palette, having a consistent look and feel, an editing style, so using the same filters on all your photos, having depth and white space, and also that goes hand in hand with grid placement. So I'm going to show you how this looks because I know the words don't necessarily help. So let's look at an example of how to actually create a consistent grid. So here is a before. So I'm going to show you a makeover of a grid. Here's a before. This is a book Instagram. So she does book reviews and sells kind of her reviews to publishers. So her grid originally was not that cohesive. You can see it's all over the place. It doesn't necessarily kind of wow you when you go to her profile. And I don't really feel like I want to follow her because I don't necessarily get what she's all about other than there's a lot of books. Here's her makeover. It's very consistent. It's beautiful. It's engaging and attractive. And it touches on more than just books. It touches on the lifestyle of reading books. It talks about, you can see travel photos, you can see design, you can see candles. This is the whole world of book reviews and books. And she has a completely consistent color palette, a look and feel. And as you can see how she places her photos next to one another, there is a nice feeling of breathing space and good placement in terms of her grid. So this is what I'm talking about in looking at your consistent and look and feel to have a visual strategy that attracts people and actually kind of persuades them to follow you if they come visit your profile, which 67% of people do. So the art and strategy of of Instagram specifically puts back to your content marketing strategy. So now how do we combine these two? How do we find the marriage between art and strategy on Instagram? Well, I would argue that it comes with strategic planning. If you can't plan ahead, you can't think strategically, and you need to have a tool in order to do that. I highly recommend using a tool that's developed specifically for Instagram. For example, a lot of us use Hootsuite or Buffer or tools like that for our social media, but they are not created for Instagram. And to be honest, I don't think they're very helpful in terms of planning your Instagram. So instead, you want to look at specific tools for Instagram specifically. So I'll show you some of them. But this is what you want to think about in terms of bringing the art and strategy together, is to create an Instagram editorial calendar that helps you align your art, align your strategic goals, and align your business goals all within your plan. So here are some of those tools. My favorite, and I'm highly recommended, I'm not paid by them, I actually pay them to use their tool, is Later. Later is my favorite tool for Instagram planning. Planoly, Preview, some of the other ones that I've heard are pretty good tool. Why I recommend these tools is that you can create hashtag libraries. So that means you do a few hours of work up front to create libraries based on categories, so that as soon as you're creating a caption, it only takes you 2 minutes to pick your hashtags because you've done all the work. This is extremely key. Hootsuite doesn't have this. Buffer doesn't have this. Later, and all these tools have visual grid planners. So that means you can look at your grid on how it will look on your account, and you can drag and drop your pictures around in order to make your grid look cohesive. This is important. Media library, You can use filters and labels to tag your content so you can make it easy to find what content to plan when. If you work with a team, or if you work with a freelancer or someone like me, you want to have this team collaboration. Curation tools, which means if you're online, you can easily right-click and send that piece of media you like to your Later or your other tool library, and you get analytics. Later also tells you your best time to post, so I never have to think about it. It just tells me right on my calendar what my best time is, and I schedule appropriately. So strategic planning is so key. What I recommend, because I know this is like so much information for you guys within an hour, is to test and pick your tool of choice. Like I mentioned, I highly recommend Later, but I would recommend testing a couple of them to make sure you like them. The biggest part of the process to get your strategic planning going is collecting and curating content. That might mean for your brand having a couple photo shoots to get brand content. It might mean curating content from Pinterest or from other accounts. It might mean user-generated content. I don't know. It has to depend on your strategy, but you need to have a few hundred or 100 photos in your media gallery to really make sure you can implement your strategy properly. Schedule your best time blocks based on the information you find within these tools. Create your hashtag library to save yourself time. Write strategic captions, and then batch your planning sessions. That means don't plan your content the night before a post is supposed to go live. For me and for my clients, I recommend doing it either every week or every 2 weeks and planning out content far in advance so that as soon as a post is ready to go live, all you need to do is focus on whipping up engagement, creating relationships with your followers, and trying to get them to push to other channels or to create relationships via email with you. It really comes back to this statement. Instagram is a curated visual experience of your brand that is creatively presented, strategically planned in order to build a relationship with your audience. That is how you combine art and strategy on Instagram in order to meet the goals of your business and to make Instagram a viable marketing channel as well. And because I know this was so much information, I put everything into a checklist for you guys because I just know that this took me so long to figure out and my clients so long that I wanted to give you something a little bit more tangible. So if you go to my website, it's at quintempest.com/Instagram checklist. You can download it there. And I also included a page of all the tools I mentioned as well as links to those sites so you don't have to kind of scramble around trying to find them. So I hope that's helpful. Kendall, do we have any questions? I think we have a few minutes, right? I always talk so much. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Thanks so much, Quinn. I am going to open up to the question and answer. And we actually have one from Crisal. She says, can you talk a little bit about how live video can play into your gram strategy?
Absolutely. So live video is super effective, but you really need to make sure that it is aligned with the rest of the stuff that you're doing. I've seen a lot of brands throw out live videos where I'm kind of surprised and don't necessarily know what they're talking about. So I think you always want to just make sure you announce that you're doing a live video ahead of time on your stories. You can also do it on your feed too, but give people a heads up on what they can see because that live video lives for 24 hours. And so to give them some context ahead of time is really key. I found live videos to be really effective when you just don't have enough time to cover what you want to cover in a story, and you don't want to be doing like 20 different slides on your Instagram story. So just coming on and doing a live, that is just bringing your brand to life even more for people in a longer period of time. And in my experience with my clients and myself, people are always very appreciative when you do that, especially if you come at the live video with offering something of value or teaching something or giving someone a behind the scenes look. I think those are kind of the few ways of doing live video that are extremely effective.
Fantastic. Thank you, Quinn. And Joan asks, about how often would you recommend posting?
So I would say, well, it really honestly, Joan, depends on your resources and kind of how much content you have. So I would say to work up to once a day. I don't really at this point see any point in doing more than once a day because of stories now coming where you can do stories all throughout the day. So I think as far as your feed goes, once a day is where you should work up to. But like I said, collecting and curating your content is going to be a lot of work at first. So if you can only do 2 to 3 times a week at first, that's okay. Work up to once a day. In terms of stories, that really depends on your brand as well, but I would say minimum 5 stories if you could. The easiest type of stories to do is like following along with your day, or if you have a group of a team or a small business, you can have each person do a takeover, and people seem to like that. And of course, always using all the different features within stories keeps it really engaging. So work up to 1 time a day for your feed, and at least 4 to 5 stories a day on your stories.
And on that note, just for like time efficiency and productivity, are there any sorts of websites that you can recommend that helps you maybe like schedule out posts so then they go onto your feed and maybe you're busy with something else, or do you need to be doing it right then and there live to get that post up?
Yeah, so actually Instagram just rolled out a new update like maybe a month ago that anyone with a business account can now have their posts auto published to the platform. Before that, you had to do it manually. So in the case of later, they would send your social media person or you a text message saying you need to post your photo. Now, if you have a business account, it will auto post. But I don't recommend doing that because of unless you can do it only once in a while, just because of the fact that engagement is so important. So I would recommend having someone or doing it yourself and then whipping up engagement for the first half hour after that post in order to get the most traction, because it's not like Facebook or Twitter where you can just kind of set it and forget it. You need to be actively promoting that post and engaging with people as soon after that post goes live. So you can do that once in a while, like weekends. You don't need to worry too much. And like for my personal account, since I work with my clients on their accounts too, my personal account, I just let my weekends like breathe. Like I don't sit there on a Sunday engaging with people for 45 minutes after my post goes live. So I make sure I schedule posts that I know aren't as important towards my goals on the weekend. So I don't recommend setting it and forgetting it because that's not how Instagram works, unfortunately.
Awesome. Thanks for that clarification, Quinn.
Yeah.
And then we have a question from Maheen. She asks, is
Hi,
non-live
Maheen.
video, is it
I know her.
non-live video? Perfect. Is non-live video weighted higher in the algorithm than photos or stories?
So the algorithm is different with stories and the photos, but video all across the board is just really great. And yes, well, okay, Instagram's never said they weight video, but in terms of the amount of engagement video gets just naturally because humans will sit there watching moving videos. You know, when you ever go to a bar and there's like a photo or a TV sitting like right in front of you and you just like can't help but watch it. That's kind of the same way with people engaging with video, is that as soon as they see moving video, they start to look at it. So Instagram will start looking at how long your video is viewed in order to kind of gauge the engagement on that. If it starts getting likes and comments, that will only boost it more. And if you go onto the Explore page on Instagram, which is where it's not by, you don't see content that people you're following. It will be people that Instagram thinks you're interested in. You're going to see a lot of videos because videos get engagement faster than photos do. So if you have a business that you can focus on video content, highly, highly recommend it. And then repurposing snippets of that video in your story, as well as if you can do some type of live as well. But yeah, I think video is key on Instagram.
Perfect. Wonderful. And then from Stephanie, she asks, so she's pretty new at this. So
Okay.
are all of the tools created for desktop or just mobile? And then also, if you're a soft skills business consultant, in that industry, what do you suggest for content?
So the first question about tools, like Later is a desktop and a mobile tool. In terms of planning, you should definitely do that on your desktop because it's way easier. But they do have a mobile version. And the editing tools were all mobile. If you have a designer, obviously they're going to use like Photoshop or something. And then Kendall, the second question, soft skills consultant. I'm actually not familiar with that term.
Sure. So I think that if I have the right Stephanie correct, so she's sort of like a business consultant working with a lot of like CEOs and really kind of building leadership skills amongst those kind of high level people. So I think she's wondering what's the good kind of content that can still build engagement to not only speak to a wide audience, but also those that maybe she's working with or really would love to work with.
Okay, that's a loaded question. I'd actually like to talk more about that. So I would first start with looking at people within that niche who do something similar. And I will say from my own experience, there are a lot of leadership coaches, business coaches on Instagram. And and I don't know what type of audience Stephanie works with, so she might have to kind of gear her strategy towards who's hanging out on Instagram specifically. It might be more of the women CEO or the kind of the small business owner. I don't know. So she would need to figure out what does she really want to focus on Instagram specifically, and who are some similar people to look at there. And then you can have fun with the visual strategy. Like look at my photo here on the screen. This is my personal account, which is, I do graphic design, web design, digital strategy. And you might not necessarily know that right away looking at this, but that's not my visual strategy. My visual strategy is fun, is colorful, is creating this kind of joyful experience and motivating other entrepreneurs to live a balanced life with their business. So that's my visual strategy. And it's kind of like an offshoot of what I do, but I'm able to create relationships with this target audience in order to get business off of this platform. But my visual strategy might not be always posting photos of leadership tips, You kind of have to think in terms of a broader universe of your brand on Instagram and how that can translate visually. But I do think inspirational quotes, motivational tips. If she's a personal brand, then she needs to be putting herself out there, featuring case studies, all of those things. But on Instagram, people are really looking to be motivated, inspired, and to learn. And so to really kind of move your strategy towards that is going to be the most effective. But first and foremost, start with looking at other competitors within that space to kind of get an idea of where they started.
Perfect. Thank you. And then Michelle asks if it's possible to post a video on your account that is stored on a YouTube or Vimeo.
No. So it needs to, well, you can store it anywhere, but you're going to have to upload it to Instagram specifically. So you're going to have it live in both places in that case, but it should be really easy to upload a video from your own computer if you already had the file. But you can't just share like a YouTube video from someone else on your account unless you had access to that file. And remember, on stories, the limit for each story is 15 seconds. And so I'll tell you one tool I like to split up videos that are longer than that. It's called continual. So if you have a minute-long video, but you want to put it on your stories, you need to upload it into continual, so it will split it up into 15-second snippets. On your grid, it can be up to a minute. But you can't just share YouTube videos. You have to upload the file itself.
Got it. Okay, wonderful. And we've got another couple of questions here, and then I think for time constraints, we'll probably maybe fit in maybe one more, and we can connect any of you with Quinn, of course, afterwards. And Sheila, I'm going to connect you with Quinn specifically, but here's the question, Quinn. I've noticed increased engagement with videos opposed to photo on my Instagram account.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts pertaining to that?
Great. I think that's great. And I think that is a perfect insight to gather and to start building off of that. So all of the time you should be looking and gathering insights. So if you're seeing that video is much more engaging, do more video. If you're seeing, so just because this is up right now on my screen, any photos of myself get really high engagement. People like to know the person behind my brand. And I've had other clients that have said their inspirational quotes get really good engagement. And so we just start to take those insights very simply and start to schedule more content like that. And so always testing and always figuring out what gets the best engagement should just kind of give you that kind of strategic guideline. Videos are generally really great. I personally have a hard time figuring out how to create videos, but I always recommend and push my clients to create videos in whatever way possible. So use that insight, schedule more content like that, and you're going to keep seeing engagement grow.
Fantastic. And all of the feedback that we've received so far is thanks for the amazing class, heard
Okay.
and learned a lot of actionable things. One person asks, how do we get to hear more of your expertise, Quinn?
Oh, well, thank you. Well, follow me on Instagram. I actually share a lot of stuff in my stories specifically. And then if you go just to like sign up for this document, it will put you on my email list. And I'm actually planning on doing some more webinars about this stuff. I'll do another Instagram one like this. But then I also have my background's in content marketing, even like corporate content marketing. So I'm starting to create some resources for smaller businesses and entrepreneurs around that. So if you sign up for my list, then I'm happy to, keep you guys updated. I'm just pulling it all together, but I love teaching and I love talking about this stuff. So please stay in touch and I'll let you know as soon as stuff is up.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Quinn. I'm going to
Yeah.
get off of the webinar here and let you get on with your day. But thank you again for everybody that signed on. And thank you, Quinn, for this fantastic webinar. It has really been filled with a lot of really wonderful ideas and kind of nuts and bolts on really what the strategy can look like and how you can really
Okay.
own your social media. So I really appreciate your time. And we'll be sending out the recording here in the next 24 to 48 hours, everyone. Have a
Yeah, thank
great
you so
day.
much.
Of course, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.